edition. It is Tuesday night. It is me. It is Carl Jones. It is the All-22 film from the Bills and the Dolphins, going in-depth, breaking it all down, both sides of the ball. A lot of good stuff to get to tonight after the Bills' third win of the year. And, you know, Carl, I think most of the time we start this discussion on offense, but I think the defensive conversation might be a little more interesting for this show. So let's start there, and let's start specifically with a guy who was brought in to be a game changer and a guy who really against the Jets might have been legitimately that. And I think the thing that's surprising for both of us, and I'm talking about Joey Bosa, isn't the amount of game changing he's done. It's the amount of game participating he has done so far.
Percent of the snaps last Thursday night against the Miami Dolphins. I don't think you and I, nor anyone else who projected Joey Bosa's snap count when he signed with the Buffalo Bills last March thought they would be anywhere, maybe even above 70, at least this part in the year. And I think that's twofold. I think that says a lot about how he's playing as at this point in this calendar. Like, oh my gosh, he's a little bit better than what we all envisioned. He's good against the run. He is timely and having coming up with big plays in terms of a pass rusher as well. But I think that also speaks to some of the depth around him in the edge room. Greg Rousseau hasn't necessarily played as well as he did last year. AJ Epinesa at times has gotten pressure on the quarterback, but not necessarily consistent. Javon Solomon has played well for what you expect out of a fifth-round pick in his second year, but not necessarily someone that needs to be out there down in and down out. So, and obviously Michael Hoyt is not in the picture right now, so that adds to it a little bit. But Bobby Babbage said it, I believe, after the Ravens game, we're like, hey, they need to get that number down. This is a thing where, like, hey, the number keeps going up and up. I think 87% is the highest it's ever been. So I think that is something that we're going to monitor at least until Michael Hoyt gets back, because listen, they blew out the Jets. It was still high. They needed him against the Ravens. I don't think this is going to be coming down anytime soon.
The one thing about the percentages, it does kind of lie a little bit because the Ravens only ran 50 plays. So, you know, Joey Bosa could do a high percentage and still not have a high number of snaps. Even this Dolphins game, 87 is ridiculous. And we'll talk a little more about that in just a second here. But the Dolphins only ran 57, 58 plays. He was around 53 plays. That's still, to your point, way more than anyone thought he would put in and way more than I think anyone wants him to put in. But it's not like he's running 87% of 70 snaps, which then it's like both hands on the alarm button. What the heck are we doing here? And I think you're right. You know, I think it is a combination of how good he's looked. And against the Jets, he was phenomenal. But even in this Dolphins game where every time the Bills play the Dolphins, the defensive linemen, you could tell they hate it. Every time you're talking about Tua, they're like, he's going to get the ball out in less than 2 seconds. There's nothing we can really do. Yeah, we're going to try. We're going to get our hands up. They almost hate to even go into the game. Even with it being that offense, I thought Bosa had, multiple opportunities where he won reps. He looked good. I don't know if he's elite all-star Joey Bosa, all-pro Joey Bosa, like he was last week against the Jets, but we've gotten a good player for the first 3 games. And I want to talk about this a little bit more here too after we conclude the Bosa conversation, but Greg Rousseau, to your point, has not been what we would expect out of Greg Rousseau. And that surprises me for a couple reasons, but let's go back to Bosa just for a minute. How long can the Bills keep this up, knowing that guy that played against the Jets, you need him to show up in January?
It's tough and I'm not going to be the schedule guy because lo and behold, the schedule conversation has gone left on social media. I don't even want to bring up the word schedule out loud, but over the next few weeks or so, let's just say the Bills have a manageable schedule. So I would, in theory, not want Joey Bosa to be above 75% of the snaps on defense. They know what they have in Javon Solomon. I think they, in terms of a body type, in terms of a player, but maybe AJ Epinesa could get some of those reps. Obviously, the Landon Jackson part of this is the fact that he doesn't contribute on special teams, so it's hard to justify a fifth defensive end who doesn't do anything on that phase of the game. But over the next month or so before Hoyt gets back, I just can't emphasize this enough. I would just find a way to just maybe have more Rousseau and Epinesa snaps and maybe – but here's the issue with Joey Bosa, though. He's by far your best pass rusher, and so Javon Solomon's best as a pass rusher as well, and you would think the same thing with Greg Rousseau. When are you taking him off the field? Because Javon Solomon's not playing on first down. It is a weird situation for the defensive coaches to be in on when to take Joey Bosa off the field.
You don't really have that guy on first and second down, to your point. Solomon, when he's played, he's been a pass rusher from the defensive tackle spot for the most part. He's not really an edge player, So you're really left with Epinesa and Rousseau as the only guys that you can really count on playing from that edge spot. And it's weird because this Bills team usually rolls out a number of defensive linemen that can, move inside, move outside, do different things. And Michael Hoyt theoretically can do a little bit of that when he's available, but that won't be for 3 more weeks. So the Bills are going to keep, probably just by sheer numbers and the fact that, Joey Bosa's earning it, they're probably going to play with fire a little bit, putting him out on the field as much as they are. Remember, Sean McDermott a couple weeks ago when the conversation was about Joey Bosa said, you have to earn the right to pass rush on third down, which I think some of us kind of roll their eyes at because it's Joey bleeping Bosa. He earned the right a long time ago. But regardless, to that point, he's playing well on first and second down to earn those reps on third down. Let's go to Greg Rousseau just for a minute here. I'm not concerned about Greg Rousseau. I think we'll still see more. The thing I've always thought about Greg Rousseau, 2 things. Number one, he's a guy that consistently gets better, incrementally, but better. He's also the guy that I can count on to do what he's going to do more games than not, or almost every game before this season. This season, we really haven't seen him even pushing the pocket. We haven't seen him be a factor on stunts a couple times in this game. Again, I'm not concerned because this is the guy of all the guys, Ed Oliver included, I think the Bills can count on the most, but it is a little glaring that number 50 has been the one that I think has been maybe the most disappointing of the guys they've rolled out there in the defensive line so far relative to what he normally does.
Yeah, and especially when you bring in someone like Joey Bosa, the talking point is that that helps out everyone else on the defensive front because it brings them down a lot in terms of their assignments and their responsibility. Like, hey, Greg Rousseau is not going to be the number one person on the scouting report for opposing teams anymore because Bosa's there. And that really hasn't come to fruition. And I know Ed Oliver only played 1 game, but even without Ed Oliver, Joey Bosa is still on this defensive front. So you will love to see a bigger impact out of 50. He signed a new deal. You want him to level up. Once again, it is September. The leaves are still the green outside. So I'm not even about to ring any alarm bells. But it is something I'm going to keep a keen eye on when you go up against a Saints team that it's not that great. We're going to be polite here. Not that great. And you got a Panthers team after that and the Falcons and whatnot and Patriots after that. So I would love to see against some of these teams that aren't necessarily world beaters for him to get his mojo back, get his swagger back, and find a way to get into the backfield.
Yeah, and one of the other things that I was looking at semi-related to that is this Bills team has been top 4 in terms of forcing turnovers the last 5 years. They've had at least 26 each of those 5 years, 30 in 3 of those years. Right now they've got 3 through 3 games. That's on pace for 17, which is well below their normal number. You look at the Saints in Orchard Park and you think that's a 5 turnover game waiting to happen right there. We're going to get our averages back up. But look, you brought the schedule. Let's go into that for a minute too, because when you look down the Bills schedule from a defense point of view, what is the bar this team is going to have to be at? Because forget about the next few weeks. The only offenses I see left on the schedule that I think are any sort of a test are Tampa and Philly, and they don't see either of those 2 teams until darn near Thanksgiving. I don't think the Chiefs fall into that category right now. Nobody in the division, not, Houston or any of those teams that maybe we thought would have been different. It's going to be a tough road for the defense, not on the field, but in terms of the reputation off the field, I think for the next maybe 3 months.
Yeah, I think that's the point. I love the point you made right there in terms of reputation and like, hey, the defense wasn't great last year. They were probably a below average unit that was propped up by turnovers. This year, they got spanked in week 1. They came out and played much better in week 2. And after that, they're going to have this, well, you're playing up against Michael Penix and Tua Tagovailoa and Drake May and Bryce Young and then Joe Flacco after that. The Chiefs will probably look a lot different in 4 weeks when they get 3 of their receivers back and
doesn't hurt.
So and then the running back situation, I assume will be rectified by that point because there's no way in God's green earth they do that again because that was a hilariously bad Sunday night. But I will give them 2.5. I'll throw the Chiefs in there as a possible because as long as Mahomes is out there, it is still funky for a defense to go up against. But yeah, they're going to have to play stellar, lights out for anyone to go into the postseason and be like, yes, this Bills defense is something that they can hang their hat on come postseason because if you're giving up 24 points a game to this part of the schedule is like, does that really spark you confidence in that the fact that they can hold Lamar under 30 or Mahomes under 30 when the games really count in the postseason?
And that's the thing that's going to make it hard for this particular show and shows like this to where when you talk about the Bills for the next 3 months, a lot of it's going to be, okay, well, they were good here, but are they going to be good in January when it matters? And there aren't that many. I mean, you look around the AFC, what offenses are you scared of? Baltimore, like you said, maybe the Chiefs if they're different, and the Chargers, and that's it. Regardless, though, those are the teams the Bills are going to have to get through, one if not two, to go to the Super Bowl. So it's going to be a weird year because the schedule looks soft in the preseason, and it looks Charmin soft now. I mean, you could, jump on that and trampoline off that thing and it'd be like a pillow of feathers. So it's not something that's going to be offering any sort of regular test. It's going to make it weird for us to really break this down.
I will say one point on that to make it come to fruition. Remember last year when they played the Lions and the Rams and the defense didn't play their best and their alarm bells were ringing. And then right after that, they dusted the Jets and everyone was like, "Yep, the defense is back. They're playing much better." They did the same thing to the Patriots the week before. Come to find out, defense when they play up against teams that aren't in their weight class, they can pounce on them a little bit. And then they get to the postseason and they fall apart again. So I am not trying to pick on the Bills defense here, but it is what it is in terms of the expectations that they're going to have in front of them based off who they play.
It's going to be a long semester with very few tests, very few pop quizzes, very few exams of any sort of note. It's going to be just, classwork, literally, for the next 3 months, largely. All right, let's go back into the X's and O's from the Dolphins game. One of the other things you wanted to talk about was the corner situation. Shocker. Carl's a former Division I corner. He loves talking about corners. And what the Bills may have to do with that corner 2 spot going forward after a game where Trey White made some plays, but he also seemed to be exposed in a couple situations, especially against extra elite fast receivers that the Dolphins have.
And this kind of ties into the conversation we just had in terms of the high-end tier teams that the Bills are going to play in the regular season as well as presumably in the postseason. Last year, it was so evident in that Chiefs game that when they had to pivot and play a little bit more man coverage, I know Christian Benford left that game, but they still walked down the field on the drive that he was in the game. They couldn't pivot because they weren't really that athletic on the back end and they couldn't really execute that way. Some of that you can say, oh, that's Rasul Douglas out there, DeMar Hamlin's out there. Okay, cool. They substitute Cole Bishop in for DeMar, hopeful that he's a better athlete so he can guard some of these guys better in space. At this point right now, it's Trey White and for Rasul Douglas. And for all of Trey's gifts at this point in his career, he is still a very smart player. Even at his peak, he was never Pat Surtain in terms of following around these elite guys. And you saw that Thursday night on those third down situations where Jalen Waddle got the best of him. I think once you get to the postseason, it becomes such a matchup part of the year. We're like, hey, we're not running just any play now. We're going to find guys and weaknesses on the field. I don't know if he will provide that versatility in terms of schematics. We're like, hey, we can play zone as well as man coverage and feel very comfortable with our guys back there, which means whenever Max Harrison gets back, and it's going to be weird, difficult, I would say, considering he's most like the past 2 months at this point. Dorian Strong played a little bit in week 1. I would love to see what those guys can offer by the end of the year because I know, unfortunately, at this point, Trey isn't a guy who can really follow around these guys in man coverage.
To your point, though, those are at least the Bills have options. 2 rookies who both theoretically can do it, and we've seen Dorian Strong do it at least in one game so far and be okay. The thing with Max Hairston, and we've talked about it a couple times, the Cole Bishop issue from last year. Once you miss that camp time, you are so far behind, it's hard to catch up. And like you said, he's still, not doing anything. He's still doing his 4 weeks of being an injured reserve. So the first time he's going to be on a field to get any work, theoretically could be week 5. And then somewhere in the midst of game planning, you've got to get that guy ready to put him on the field against the Ravens, Chargers, Chiefs, whoever in January. That's a tough ask. To me, I think Dorian Strong might be the better of the two just because he's the one that's been healthy and upright, for the last few weeks. But Carl, from a corner point of view, when you think about needing one of these two guys at the end of the year, what are the things that the Bills are likely trying to do and or those players are likely trying to do to get themselves up to a level where Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich would feel comfortable about running them out, in any sort of game, let alone an AFC championship in January?
I know this sounds dumb, but you got to know the defense. Like you truly do. There were a couple plays Thursday night where you can tell that Cole Bishop actually has full command of the defense back there, where there was actually the Trey White play where he got a stuff at the line of scrimmage on one of those screen plays where Cole Bishop was telling him, hey, go press him. Trey White was going to back up. That's where, like, if a cornerback knows his stuff, I don't need the safety to communicate with me all like that. So you will be hopeful that a rookie like a Max Harrison or Dorian Strong is at that point where they can execute it like Trey White did. So that's first and foremost. You got to know the playbook, the ins and outs, and all the checks, especially in January when you got to confuse a Patrick Mahomes, confuse a Lamar Jackson, whoever comes out of the NFC. And then also, I know that man coverage is at the bottom. The NFL plays less man coverage today than they ever have. I am well aware of that. But in certain instances, you have to do it. Whether it's third and short, whether it's 2 minute, it is mano a mano, my man versus yours. And in which one of those players would be best in that scenario? Max Harrison wasn't great at that in college. He's a smaller guy. I don't know if he'll ever be elite at it, but you're hopeful that someone with his skill set can maybe become adequate to maybe even decent at it in the National Football League. I just don't know if that'll be this year, considering he hasn't got a lot of reps added because he's been on the sideline. So those are probably some of the things that I will be looking for come January because, listen, it's Mahomes. How much can you really trick him? So like, I need to play mano a mano and get in your face and play man coverage against those guys that are across from me.
Real quick with Cole Bishop, I know what you're talking about with some of the pre-snap stuff where it looks like he's really got a handle on the defense. Post-snap, though, it feels like I've seen a number of times where he's in coverage and not in the right spot, not sure, or the guy that's getting targeted. Not a lot, but to the point where I still don't feel like Bishop, maybe in post-snap only, has a great handle on the defense. Give me your read on 24, through 3 games so far.
Yeah, I would think that's a fair assessment, especially down the field. He's a player, even at his best. I remember when you and I talked about him the day he got drafted out there in Rochester. He is best near the line of scrimmage. That's his skill set, and that will always be his skill set. But when you get him in space, sometimes down the field, you can see the gears turning a little bit and a little slow to react at times. I don't think it's like a mega concern, but I did see some of those plays that you're alluding to. So I don't think it's some great big concern that it's going to crush the Bills come January, but I do think it's enough where I'm going to start watching week in and week out to make sure that he's picking up more of the playbook because can't reiterate this enough. I don't know how many teams he's going to play over the next month that's going to test that part, but Spencer Rattler's an NFL quarterback. Maybe even he can expose it a little bit.
There'll be spots here and there where those guys will get tested. But you're right, it's gonna be a tough conversation. All right, real quick before we get done on the defense, I want to give Deion Walker some flowers. We all saw the play where he kind of helped break up or cause the interception at the end of the game for Terrell Bernard. It was more than that with him. I thought he was better against the run. Look, he's still a guy that for his size doesn't stand his ground as much as you would want him to, but he did it better in this game. And the thing I like the most is that he was able to make some athletic plays down the line on the line of scrimmage. Even if you run away from him, he's not so large and immovable that he can't get down the line and help out. So I'm more encouraged about that with him in terms of any sort of defense, run or pass. His athleticism, Carl, is a little better than you expect for a guy who's 6'7", 330.
I've also noticed that they've tried to get him in a lot of one technique reps. And I know based off of the numbers and Ed Oliver being out, someone has to play one tech. But I do think that is an encouraging sign in terms of his development going forward, where like if he is going to be a guy that can play next to Ed Oliver and TJ Sanders on first and second down, not on third down, they are at least trying it to see if he can be something down the line. And he hasn't drowned in that department to this point.
For sure. And this game was well above the bar of drowning. He was functional, not good, but functional for sure. All right, let's move to the offensive side of the ball. And I want to start with Joe Brady because one of the things that stood out to me in this game was that an offensive coordinator who's well known for being willing to run the same play 4 or 5 times in a row, in this game had some really nice wrinkles off of Brady's staples. You'll often see the wide receiver lineup between the tight end and the tackle lead on a running play. Well, that was the setup for the Tyrell Shavers third down conversion, a great play. Obviously, the wide receiver screen is popular. Well, that play was a setup for the Dalton Kincaid touchdown, which was run so well by Josh Allen. He was like a step and a half ahead of Kincaid. Kincaid barely got his head around to make the catch on that play. And it wasn't just those two. The fact that Brady is adding things to the things we already know that they like to spam and do over and over, this is something we don't see a lot from Brady, and Carl is very encouraged.
Just like Joe Brady's adding to the Bills playbook, I'm going to add to your point and say this is also taking a lot off of Josh Allen's plate in terms of plays where he doesn't have to think. We're like, hey, listen, I see the corner following Khalil Shakir on some of these screens. Boom, I know it's man coverage. The same thing on that Tyrell Shavers big play. The same thing on the Dalton Kincaid wheel touchdown. We're like, hey, no one's following Kincaid. I know his zone. The deep third corner is going to follow the post. He's not going to fall off in time to get to Dalton Kincaid. Easy plays that you think like, oh, every OC should know how to do this. Every OC should make things easy for their quarterback. You'd be surprised. Y'all watch football, everyone at home. I'm sure anyone who's watching this program, y'all are nerds just like us. It's a lot of OCs around the National Football League, college, even down to high school, where you're like, can we get some easy buttons for our guy? And the fact that Joe Brady is providing some of those easy button plays to someone of Josh Allen's caliber speaks to how he's not afraid to get in there and even help out 17.
Let's be fair, Carl. We're a very unique brand of nerd. There are not many of those out there like that watching us right now. But to your point, it's not just Joe Brady too. It's the quarterback being able to execute. Josh has been, and Joe Brady talked about it after the game on Friday, that Josh's ability to progress through the offense and to know where to go, know where his answers are. I mean, Joe Brady gave Josh Allen credit for a second play of the game, 5-yard check down to James Cook and said, look, this is where Josh Allen is showing you how fast he goes through everything, how well he knows everything. It was a bleeping 5-yard play on 2nd and 20. Nobody cares, but that's where Josh Allen is, though, about how well and how fast he can operate this offense.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, once again, Josh Allen gets all the love for his physical capabilities. Upstairs, he's progressed a lot as well.
One thing that people had a problem with this game, I guess, with Josh Allen and Joe Brady, is the inability to go deep. There was a stat that this game, I don't remember what the number exact was, but essentially both teams combined, it was the least number of throws beyond 10 yards like ever since Next Gen could, imagine charting stats. Now, it wasn't as bad when you're watching on film. There were a number of throws deep that just didn't connect. But from the Bills' point of view, going deep might be something they don't do very much. Allen right now is 26th in the NFL on average air yards per throw. But, Carl, they really shouldn't be trying to go deep based on who this offense is.
Yeah, play to your strengths. This team has the Eagles lost Lane Johnson for a little bit. The Lions are still young in the interior, although they look phenomenal Monday night. Shout out to the Detroit Lions for what they did. The Bills might have the best offensive line in football. The running game looks spectacular with James Cook leveling up. Why would you not lean into that? And I get it. You say, oh, I have a cyborg at quarterback. Yes, you have a cyborg at quarterback. But the strength of this team is in the trenches with a running back and receivers who have skill sets, and they are unique and they provide value to this offense. But those skill sets aren't really conducive to be the Cincinnati Bengals and air it out 40, 50 times a game. I hear you. You have Josh Allen and you want to turn this bad boy into 7-on-7 football like we're in Texas. It's fun for me too. You think I want to cover 4-yard runs in live time? Although watching them back on All 22, I love some of these duo runs and the physicality of it. But you think I want to be up in the booth watching that either? No, I don't. But I understand how beneficial and how helpful it is and how this leads to success on the field. I get it's frustrating as a fan when you see this guy at quarterback and you just want to weaponize him and be, oh man, Superman, all that good jazz. You have an elite offensive line, a running game that's cooking. I promise you, this offense is in a good spot at the moment.
Yeah, and to your point, it's not just, like you said, the receivers. What they do well is the intermediate over the middle stuff. Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, Josh Palmer. These are guys that want to run, 15-yard digs, slants, things like that. They're not 9-pattern guys. They're not fly guys. They don't really, who's the speed guy in this team that you want to send straight down the field? They don't really have that guy. So not only are you playing to your strengths, you're playing away from your weaknesses. Sure, there's a concern that defenses might be able to bunch up and eventually cause problems, but when that happens, then we'll address it. The problem in January very rarely has been the offense. And, that goes for this everybody eats offense last year too. So I'm with you. I'm not concerned at all. Yes. Are there things in theory that could be a problem? Sure. But as long as this offensive line is trucking, as James Cook is playing at this level, then this is where the Bills offense should sit going forward.
Yeah. Not putting the ball in harm's way. I get it. It's sexy. It's fun. But let's be realistic here, y'all. The offense is phenomenal.
Speaking of sexy and fun, Jackson Hawes, baby, blocking tight end. What isn't more sexy and fun than a blocking tight end? Look, we're going to laugh about the setup for this. This is no joke. This dude has become, you know me, Carl. Taron Johnson's my guy to watch on film. I love watching, out of nowhere, the guy flying in like a rocket to take out a running back. Taron Johnson's been moved to number 2. Jackson Hawes is now the number 1 guy to watch on film. This dude has opened up so many different things. You talked on one of the shows we did, I think, after one of the Dolphins game about how much it opens up the tight end room. I'm going to start with this. So many times the Bills like running that outside zone where James Cook takes the cutback lane all the way back. Well, you need a guy in the back end that closes that off. Jackson Hawes has been that guy. That's only one of 7 great things he's doing, but that's the one that sticks out to me. Where are you with this rookie tight end so far?
It's a 10 out of 10 home run through 3 weeks. And I know that's crazy to say, but I was talking about this on my X feed earlier today when someone was saying oh, the usage of Dalton Kincaid. How is he? He's a phenomenal blocker now. He's a phenomenal blocker now because he's not doing none of the stuff that any tight end does anymore. The Bills don't utilize him like a tight end. The only thing that Dalton Kincaid at this point in his career is that he does as a tight end is his name on the roster. The Bills basically say, hey, listen, you're going to block little guys, and then you're going to block on the backside of runs, and we're going to run way away from you. Do not worry. And that's because Jackson Hawes has become an actual tight end, and he is moving people. There were plays where he was moving Jalen Phillips and saying, hey, buddy, come here. That sideline, I'm not going to take you over there, but I'm going to escort you about 3 yards away from it. I got James Cook coming right behind me. You cool with that? And then nothing that Jalen Phillips could do about it because Jackson Hawes is that much of a demon next to him. I got to ask Deion Dawkins next time we see him, how fun is it to have Jackson Hawes next to you? Because I'm sure as a tackle, having someone that's moving like a tackle, and that's a tight end, has to be super duper fun. Takes a lot of stress off of his shoulders. He is so fun to watch. I know that's crazy to say, but like watching him literally move defensive ends off their spot is wild.
I'm going to actually, I was already planning to ask that exact question to Spencer Brown. So you take Deion, I'll take Spencer. We'll get, both sides of the offensive line covered. Beyond that, it wasn't just Jalen Phillips. He turned Bradley Chubb. You talk about, escorting Jalen Phillips. There was a couple plays where Bradley Chubb is staring at the Dolphins sideline, and Jackson Hawes said, no. I need you looking over here to this Bills sideline. We're going to dance over this way until you're looking the way I want you to look. He had another block, the big pitch that went for 26 yards for James Cook. He is on Deion Dawkins' hip, bumps the defensive end so that Dawkins has better leverage on it, and then goes downfield and plows through a defensive back. So two guys on the same play, which people at home might think, wow, that's incredible. Guys are supposed to do that. That's kind of a technique thing. Regardless, he's doing it at that level in game 3, and he's catching passes. 3 games in a row, 1 catch each game. It is so fun and so impressive to watch this, and especially for an offensive line that 2-3 years ago, this was not a group that was going to road grade anybody. Now the offensive line's doing it, and there's a tight end the Bills can run on the field to do it as well. It is so much fun to watch so far early this season.
Just so well constructed with that room. Like, hey, Dawson Knox is a little bit of everything, but I'm not going to ask Dalton Kincaid to do any of that grimy stuff no more. You may basically just be a slot receiver for the rest of your time as long as Jackson Hawes is your teammate.
One other thing I want to get to with the guys up front, I thought David Edwards had a very athletic game. There was a play where the Dolphins dropped the defensive lineman in front of Edwards and brought an overload blitz to the right. And when Edwards realized it, he turned and sprinted 5 yards, but sprinted over to the other side of the offensive protection to take out, to help out, and made a difference there. You don't see an offensive lineman move like that. He had a pulling play too where he looked good. For the guy that's normally like the 5th of 5 when we talk about this offensive line and who the important players are, Edwards was the one that stood out to me quite a bit in this game. All right, Carl, anything else from this game before we let go?
Nah, not necessarily. Just I understand the concerns, everybody. Like, the offense wasn't sexy. The offense has shown you through 3 weeks they can play however you need them to be. You want to be ugly and take it in the phone booth, they can do that. If they want to air it out, they only did it for like 3 drives in week 1, but that was all they needed to come out with a win. The offense can do however they want to do on their terms.
All right. Looking forward to the Bills-Saints conversation. And by looking forward to it, I mean not really looking forward to it at all. But, hey, it's a football game. If the Browns can beat the Packers, there might be some real things to talk about when it comes to Bills-Saints next week. So for Carl Jones, I'm Thad Brown. Thanks for watching. You can always catch the Let's Talk Ball edition of BKL Nightly on YouTube and on Spotify. This program is on in Rochester at 8:30, on Rochester First, on WIVB Plus in Buffalo at 9. Check your local Nexstar listings for time and dates in your area. We'll see you again next Tuesday. For Carl, I'm Thad. Catch you later.